Christmas is all around me, and so the feeling grows. It's written in the wind, it's everywhere I go. So if you really love Christmas, come on and let it snow.
So I'm talking to my roommate and I'm like, hey, have you ever seen Love Actually? And she's like, yeah, I have. Actually just recently for the first time. And I was like, how is that possible? Like, I feel like I've seen it like a lot in my lifetime, and probably like 4 or 5 times easily. And she's like, well, the first time I saw it, I was kind of like scarred from to like watch it again. And I was like, what do you mean? So she has her friend over one night, and she starts her story by saying, we just got in a couch. And I was like, what does that have to do with the story? She's like, we just got in a couch, and it was from IKEA, and they had this huge box, and the box was like so great that she was like, I'm gonna make a fort out of it. So she invites her friend over, and she's like, do you want to have a sleepover in my fort tonight? And her friend's like, yeah, for sure. So they come over, they build the fort. They're like, let's watch a movie in it, let's make some popcorn, let's like sleep in the fort. And so that's what they do. And her mom, like halfway through the night, comes up to her and goes, hey, do you want to watch Love Actually with us? We're going to we're gonna like watch Love Actually, and like you guys can stay in the fort and watch by yourselves, or like you guys can come out and watch with us. And she was like, no, we're just gonna stay in the fort, like we'll watch something in here, like not a big deal. So they have their headphones on, they're watching like on a laptop or something. And like halfway through, she comes out of the fort and she like looks at the screen, and she's watching 2 people have sex, and she goes, oh my god, my parents are watching porn. And then she goes right back into the fort, and she was like, is Love Actually just a porno? And so that's what she thought Love Actually was.
That's fair, honestly. Yeah, that would be my reaction. I completely forgot about this until you brought it up, but my introduction to Love Actually was when I was managing a poke restaurant a couple of years ago. And we had a big TV up in the corner that would be just like constantly streaming Netflix, The Office mostly. And I have absorbed like an insane amount of Office knowledge without having ever actually seen an entire Office episode all the way through. Like, I know all the plot lines, but they're kind of jumbled up in my head. If you asked me to like explain how a single episode went, couldn't do it. But one day it was getting near the holiday season, and one of the employees there, who will remain nameless, but I know who you are, was like, Joel, can we put Love Actually on? And I'm like, what is it? And she's like, it's a holiday movie. And I'm like, sure, I guess. Sounds fine. And it starts playing. And I'm not really paying attention because I have like actual responsibilities, helping customers, chopping vegetables, doing other things. But the first time I look up at the screen, it's the porn star scene. It's that point in the intro where Martin Freeman and the other girl are like humping each other, and like she's just taking her shirt off for the lighting or whatever bullshit they fed her. And I'm like, we're turning that off right now. And this probably isn't true, but my memory is like there was an Asian couple that had just come in, and there was like 2 young kids standing behind the counter looking to order. And I'm like, no! And, you know, dove in slow motion to grab the remote. And I'm like, okay, never again. You are never picking a movie ever again. And of course, her recommendation the next week was Jackass. She's like, our customers would love Jackass. Love Actually brings people together. Real special way.
It really does.
Before we get into full tilt discussing all the other weird and fine plots of Love Actually, I do want to briefly taste a soda, Naomi. It is more poppy prebiotic soda. I'm trying grape this time. Hard to screw up grape.
I'm really confused on if you're just drinking sips of each of these sodas or if you're drinking like the whole thing.
Well, Naomi, we of course record 10 episodes at a time. So like I have to do kind of like wine sampling where I just try a bunch of sodas to not dilute my palate, and I spit them out in a bucket.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's the bucket? Where's the bucket, Joel? Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's bad. It's like watered down grape juice. It's not even that fizzy. I just drink straight grape juice. Grape juice is great. Why aren't you drinking like pure grape juice? Get some of like the Jewish grape juice that's like kind of like really intense and has like really fruity notes. They sell it typically around Hanukkah if you need a grape juice fix. But yeah, I would not buy this. Boy, Poppy's was doing great with their Coke version, and the other two have been pretty sad. And you got to have a product that's comparable in price if you want to have something that sucks and sell it as like a competitor to Coca-Cola.
I really like their strawberry vanilla flavor. That's a really good flavor.
I think I have that, so that could be on a future episode. But Naomi,
Yeah.
you know what else will be on a future episode? Not Love Actually, because we're gonna finish discussing it this time. We're gonna
Yes!
nail it to the wall, and I think we should
Yes!
start based upon most of our anecdotes with the porn star story. Naomi, can you tell us a little bit about the porn star story? How do these people meet?
So Martin Freeman is an extra, I'm assuming. Yeah, he's like an extra or something, or a double, like a stunt double, or I guess you could call that a stunt double. And he's acting out and getting the lighting correct for a upcoming movie or series or whatever. And he is completely naked. They're basically just filming sex scene, and he's in the sex scene with another woman, and they're trying to be like polite and stuff, but they're like just dry humping each other while just having like typical conversations. Yeah. How's the weather? How's the traffic?
Yeah, they talk about traffic, they talk about the weather, they talk about the prime minister, which is a segue into the prime minister. Yeah, I said in the last episode that this is probably one of the ones that could be cut, and I kind of reiterate that. I like the idea of like porn stars, they are just like us, but that's all this story is. It's like, look, they're human. You thought porn stars were subhuman, but they're actually human.
He's not a porn star though. Like, I wouldn't consider this a porno. I would consider this just like a double, like a stunt, right? I didn't get
this is porn, Naomi.
I didn't know that. I thought this was just like a sex scene in a movie.
Wait. Okay, this is interesting. Yeah. So every article refers to him as porn stars. Something about body doubles for something else. Yeah, they're body doubles on the set of an adult film. What the fuck does that even mean? They're not even the stars of this adult film. They're just the people for lighting. But yeah, every single place is like, this is actually a porn movie.
Okay, well, I was correct. He is a body double. So.
Yeah, fair enough. It's weird that you need body doubles when you'd think just use the actors, but
it's for the plot, Joel. Don't question it.
It's for the plot. Yeah, so it's just such a strange little thing because there's no real romantic connection. They say like one thing that's like, oh, I enjoy spending time with you. And then Love Actually has this really annoying musical riff that plays to cover up like a lack of character development. It's just like a little flute. It's like do 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 do, and that's how you know that people are falling in love with each other. And they do this so that you, as the audience, are aware that love's happening because you're not always following what just occurred that made people fall in love. But yeah, it's just like 5 scenes sprinkled throughout the movie in the 5 weeks leading up to Christmas of them consistently appearing and being body doubles on this like porn set. And then they're like, do you want to go out together? And the girl's like, yeah. And then they show up at a school play for like one of their siblings or something and are like, we're just normal people out enjoying a night on the town. And that's the end of their story.
But we've already seen each other naked. There's so little to it.
Yeah. And again, it's like, okay, cool that you're exploring like how love can bloom, but there's just nothing to it. It's so like lack substance. It's really frustrating. The thing that confused me upon this rewatch is they keep showing up and doing this work on a series of elaborate sets. And my guess is that they're all part of one giant porn film that's being filmed over 5 weeks. And this confused me because I thought porn shoots take like half a day or a day at tops, right? There's not much to them. So then I did a little bit of research, Naomi, and I have some headcanon that I want everyone to keep in mind when watching this film in the future.
Okay.
So they've been filming together for weeks, and either there were like only 2 porn star body doubles in Britain, and they've been doing multiple different scenes, or they're doing a feature-length sex film, like Pirates 2, Stagnetti's Revenge, which was a 138-minute film that cost $8 million due to a crazy amount of special effects. I do promise I had to look this up. I was like, most expensive porn film. I did not know this fact off the top of my head. But yeah, apparently it was like a ripoff of Pirates of the Caribbean, and they had like crazy CGI and whatnot. So then I was wondering, okay, what British piece of media are they spoofing in this elaborate porn film? Like, why is this taking so long for them to film? And I was looking, and I discovered that the most likely thing that they're filming, a feature-length film with dozens of cameramen and assistants and sets, is probably an adaptation of the longest English novel ever written, the 943,000-word book, Clarissa, or the history of a young lady comprehending the most important concerns of private life, and particularly shewing the distresses that may attend the misconduct of both the parents and children in relation to marriage. Yes, that is all one title. That was published in in a series of very long magazine articles back in, I think, the 17th or 18th century, and follows like a young duchess going through duchess stuff in that period. Now, Naomi, that book is 943,000 words long. For context, the entire Harry Potter series is 1.1 million words. So that book is nearly as long as 7 other novels that are considered to be some of the longest like children's novels in the game. But yeah, whenever you see this movie looking forward, you should understand that they are doing the adaptation of the 943,000 word English novel, and that's why it's taking weeks and weeks and weeks to do all of these these scenes. And this is a really tragic story that could be easily adapted into porn, Naomi. It tells the story of a young woman, Clarissa Harlow, whose quest for virtue is continually thwarted by her family. The Harlows are a recently wealthy family whose preoccupation with increasing their standing in society leads to obsessive control of their daughter, Clarissa. It is generally regarded as the author Richardson's masterpiece. But, you know, this version is, like, sexy. And she does die at the end of the book, which could lead to a downer ending, but I assume it would be, like, death from orgasms in the adaptation, so it'd probably be fine. Anyways, that's all I had to say about this plot.
God damn, that was so much from so little.
Yeah. Keep in mind that the Harry Potter films, which are just slightly longer than that, took 19 and a half hours in order to like tell the entire story. That's with cutting a bunch of stuff. So I assume that for this film, you could probably get a good 16 to 18 hours out of it and maybe turn it into like a series or something. I'm excited. I want to see that film. I want to see the Love Actually spinoff, which is just the making of this incredibly long-winded English adaptation of the novel Clarissa, the history of a young lady comprehending the most important concerns of private life, and particularly shooting the stresses may attend the misconduct both of parents and children in relation to marriage.
Joel, I think we should move on to the next. Yeah, let's move on to the plotline, which is the Prime Minister, because I know you have a lot to say about this.
Oh my God, the Prime Minister. Naomi, tell me about the Prime Minister. Who
He's
plays
so
the Prime Minister?
Sexy. Hugh Grant plays the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And he is a single prime minister, which doesn't happen very often in politics. Single men bachelors don't usually get like elected into official positions. But anyways, he's single. He just has moved into the prime minister's mansion or house or whatever, and he's meeting all his staff. At the very end, they're like, "Oh, this is your assistant." And she's this beautiful woman, and he's like, "Well, that's not gonna do." Like, he obviously like already has like feelings for this woman. They
exchange like 2 sentences. He walks into his office and he's like,
"You can be like,
get yourself together, you love-struck little boy."
No, he was probably just like,
swoons.
"Wow, that's a hot chick. I want to bang her." It's probably, as Steve Harvey would say.
Honestly,
Sorry.
that's probably accurate. I assume most English prime ministers are identical to this guy. They're just like weird, gross lechers. That's probably true.
And then throughout the movie, they like become closer, and I don't remember, do they get like caught or something, like making out? Does that happen?
That happens at the end. You're skipping so much though.
Yeah, but like he's just like, like in one of the scenes he's like, "What do I have to do around here to get a chocolate croissant and some tea?" And I was like, "This is the most British thing I've ever heard." Or like he was like,
No. The exact words he uses are something closer to, "Who do I have to bang in order to get a chocolate biscuit?"
And then she just like appears. Yeah. She's a beautiful
like she's
woman.
a fairy godmother. Yeah, I feel they really mistreat Natalie in this film.
Yeah.
She's like, my boyfriend didn't like me. He said I had elephant legs. I was so fat and he broke up with me. And Hugh Grant doesn't correct her. He's just like, do you want me to go have him murdered? Because, I control MI5. And he's like, they're really good at killing people. I could do that. Seriously consider my offer. And I think that's an aphrodisiac to him. He's like, what if I murdered someone and we like had sex on their corpse? That's my headcanon. There's a lot of headcanons I have to adopt in order to like make this film tolerable. But yeah, like Natalie gets mistreated because like later in the film, he makes a reference to her to another assistant. And she's like, "Oh, the fat girl, the fat chubby girl who's fat." And again, like this is the early 2000s. I get that this humor was so much more common, but like in no stretch of the imagination is this woman like over 120 pounds. She's a little nymph. She's a little fairy. You turn her sideways and she's probably 2-dimensional. It's so frustrating. But, this is also, a sequel to Richard Curtis's earlier work, Bridget Jones' Diary. And one of Bridget Jones's frustrations is this, like, single woman, and I think in her late 20s, early 30s, is that she's too fat. And she's not fat in the film. Again, she probably weighs 120 to 140 pounds. But this film is like, oh, you're so ugly. No man is ever going to want to date you.
And
I'm
we
like,
wonder why so many women that looked at these movies as great romantic movies have body image issues now. So here's my next thing. They like fall in love or whatever at the end of the movie. He's like, I have to have this woman. And he like shows up at this school play, and which doesn't make any sense because usually a prime minister, wouldn't they have like Secret Service or something?
He does. You're missing some important points, Naomi. There's a reason he shows up.
He shows up and he's like, I have to have this woman. And then it's like, she's there because like it's her nephew or her little brother or something that's like performing in this stupid fucking play with crustaceans and whatever. And they like
You're making
kiss.
this sound so much more interesting than it is.
There was lobsters in this play. Did you know that there was
You're
lobsters
right.
at
No, I
Jesus'
know.
birth? In
Yeah.
the nativity scene, there's lobsters. They were like, oh, Jesus is born. Crack open a lobster. Yummy. Yeah, and that's Hugh Grant's plotline.
There's a couple things that I wanted to comment on. So he's like this lovesick puppy who's like completely infatuated with his assistant from the start. And it's kind of implied it's because she's this foul-mouthed assistant who like doesn't know how to control herself. Like she's like, I didn't think I'd humiliate myself by saying shit in front of the prime minister my first day. Oh no, I did it. Oh
No,
fuck,
no,
I
she
did
said-
it.
yeah,
Oh
there we
no.
go, yeah. She's like, oh
And-
fuck.
and
I
he
didn't
finds
mean
that
to.
really cute. Yeah, and it's like, okay, sure, she's a little silly, she's a little absent-minded, whatever. But then, like, he starts, like, flirting with her awkwardly, and he makes eye contact with her, and it does the little, like, flute tune, doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo, so it's love, it's, like, actual affection,
Yeah.
it's not just, like, passing fancy. And one of the big plot points in this film, Naomi, is that he's a new prime minister, and there's a president, the president, coming to visit. And I think it's interesting because they don't mention which president. Dozens of countries have presidents, Naomi.
Yeah.
But it's just assumed by the audience that they're talking about the American president. And that's important because, again, this is a British movie that was made primarily for American tastes. They're like, oh yeah, you're the hegemon, you run the world, of course, it's your president. President's played by Billy Bob Thornton. Billy Bob Thornton, great actor. Loved him in Fargo. He's phenomenal, but he's so good at paying, like, stuck-up schmuck dickbags. Like, that's his, like, whole thing. He's so good at that. And it's really important to Hugh Grant that, like, Britain, has to conduct itself fairly. It has to, be kind of submissive. It can't be too, like, take too much of a stern stance against the United States. And all of his advisors are like, no, we have to go against what the previous administration did. We have to, like, take a stand and be assertive. And I think they're talking about the Iraq War. Because it's 2003 when this movie's coming out, right? The United States is like one of its most strong allies is the United Kingdom at this point. So all these subtle insinuations, you have 9/11 at the beginning of the film, you have discussions about relationships with America being on the fritz, are like, maybe you've like given too much to the war effort. Maybe we should have asked for some evidence before we started bombing the Middle East. Oh, whatever, it's just glossed over. And he decides, okay, we're going to take like a moderate stance. We're not going to be too aggressive. But he walks into a room when the president arrives, and the president is, like, sexually harassing Natalie. He's, like, close to her. He's whispering things in her ear. Was there also, like, him, like moving his hand up her skirt or something?
Yeah,
Am I imagining
something like that. It was just inappropriate. It was very inappropriate what he was doing.
Yeah, and he doesn't do anything. The president's just like, oh, I was just meeting your secretary. And it goes completely uncommented on. And then a couple of days later, the prime minister is like, you know what? Natalie makes me uncomfortable. I'm going to have her reassigned. And basically fires her from her job as like the executive assistant of the prime minister because the president of the United States harassed her. Now, don't worry, Naomi. It's all cool because he gives a speech to the public when he and the president have to meet. And he's like, for too long, we've been taken for granted, and we're gonna stand up against the United States. And Billy Bob Thornton's like, what? I can't believe this tiny, insignificant country would stand up against me, the most powerful leader in the world. And that's how he proves that, like, he's a good leader after all. But then he just fires Natalie. And it's like, he fired her for being sexually harassed. It's really gross. There's no real explanation given. Or it's like, oh, clearly Natalie is only in love with men in positions of power. Therefore, it's okay to get rid of her. But he regrets that decision, Naomi. And on Christmas Eve, he decides he's going to go reconcile with her. He does the exact same thing as Colin Filth does. And when he goes to Portugal, he's like, I'm going to hunt down this woman and make her my wife.
Not Colin Filth.
I know what I said. So he knew, she had mentioned where she lived earlier in the film. She's like, it's the shitty part of this one district. And he goes to the street and can't figure out which house she lives in. So he just knocks on every single door. I thought this was a cute scene. The prime minister going door to door trying to find her. And he pretends that he's a caroler at a couple of houses, and his bodyguard like chimes in. It works. It's fine. He finally gets to Natalie's house, and it turns out she lives with her family, and they're all going to the school play. That's why they go to the school play. It's because they have this thing. And he's like, well, I'll take you in my prime minister mobile, which I imagine is like the Pope mobile. It has like, big glass pane or something so he can wave a little bit as he drives down the street. They go to the school play. He gets, taken to the back because he's like a VIP, and he and Natalie decide to consummate their relationship with a smooch backstage, but the curtain pops up and they're revealed to the public, and it's like, oh, they're dating. The prime minister's dating. He's not gay. Everyone thought he was gay. He's actually okay, which is not a cool message either. But yeah, they end up happily ever after.
Or so we think. What happens in Red Nose Day? Are they still together?
Okay, I was wondering if you were going to ask that, because Red Nose Day definitely includes them.
Yeah.
So Red Nose Day, I should mention, in Love Actually, there's a scene where he dances through the Prime Minister's house of, like, what is it, Downing Street or whatever? Yeah. I don't remember what song he's dancing to. Do you remember?
No.
Okay. Red Nose Day is incredibly uncreative. Richard Curtis doesn't have any character development besides continuing what was already done. Now, prime ministers have term limits in the United Kingdom, and Richard Curtis is just like, okay, this guy got kicked out after one term, and now 14 years later, he's back in office for a second term. So it's another scene of him dancing through the, like, prime minister residence, but he's older now, and he falls down the stairs. And Richard Curtis is like, maybe it was really bad that, like, he falls in love with his, like, maid, and, like, the maid is the person who's like always providing him tea and biscuits and whatnot. And it's like this really weird relationship where she's like his slave. And so the prime minister, Hugh Grant, gets up and he's like, ooh, my back, my horrible back. And Natalie appears and they're married now. And she's like, oh, did you hurt your back? And he's like, yes. Could you make me some tea? And she's like, you can make your own tea. And she girl bosses him. And that's the update.
That's the only update?
Yeah, Richard Curtis is like rewriting what he did, and that's a good example because he's like, maybe I mistreated this woman. At least he doesn't call her fat this time, but like he's like, no, it's better because she's learned to be assertive and she's learned to not take shit from people who tell her she has elephant thighs.
At least he doesn't. Yeah, exactly. At least he doesn't tell her she has elephant thighs. Like I don't. She's got a winner there. She's got a winner.
Yeah, so, I don't know. There were some cute parts of this story, but, like, the overarching grossness of it being like, oh, the president sexually harasses the prime minister's assistant, and then he reassigns her because he feels uncomfortable with having an assistant who's too hot that she gets sexually harassed.
It's Billy Bob Thornton, so what can we say?
That's true. He was a pretty big dilf on the first season of Fargo. Naomi, what are we discussing next? What's our next plot? We're running out of plots. Can we discuss Weird Wisconsin Boy?
Yeah, I was literally just about to say that. What does he call himself? Sex God something? Sex God?
Incel McGee.
What does he call himself? He calls himself something. I thought it was so funny.
I don't even know if I have a goofy name for him.
So he's like catering, like it's just this like random guy, and it seems like he's like an errand boy, and he just like picks up random jobs. So you see him, and he's like in the office of Alan Rickman, and he's like dropping off baked goods or something, and then he's in the next scene. He's catering the wedding that we talked about in the first episode, which was Peter and Juliet's wedding, which is Natalie Portman's character. Natalie Portman. Keira Knightley. Wow. Keira Knightley's character. And he's like trying to flirt with this woman. And she's like, wow, would you like some, or he's like, do you want some of this like appetizer? And he goes, they kind of look like baby fingers or something like that. And she goes, I guess they do. And he's like, so what do you do? And she's like, oh, I'm a caterer. And he said, oh, did they ask you to cater this wedding? She said, yeah, they did. And he said, oh, I wish you didn't turn it down. And he's like still gagging over like the appetizer. And she's like, I didn't. And then he's like, he just like fucked up so bad. But it was funny. I am glad they enjoyed, like, they put that in there. I thought it was funny.
This guy, he gives me the ick. Because his first scene
yeah.
is, he's just everywhere doing errands. He shows up in the office. He shows up at the wedding. He shows up on the porn set. He's hanging out with his friend Tony. And the guy's name is Colin, by the way. Yeah, he's hanging out with his friend
Colin,
Tony on the porn set.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's just like constantly single, and he's so depressed about being single. And it's no wonder, because like his opening scene is him being like, I've got my nuts for you, baby. And he's hitting on the secretary at the firm that he's delivering snacks to. In modern day, this is the equivalent of a DoorDash driver being like, I saw you were looking hot when I dropped off the food earlier. You want some bang? And that's what he's doing now. That's what the update should be in Red Nose, actually. He wasn't included, but that's what he should be doing in the movie. But he's like, British women suck. British women are the worst. And again, this is a great example of a British film marketing itself to American audiences. Just being like, British women bad. And he tells his friend Tony he's going to go to America because anyone with a British accent is automatically sexy in America.
Yeah.
And he's like, I purchased a ticket to the sexiest state, Wisconsin. And okay, that's a fine joke, but I checked and there is no way to fly from Wisconsin to London without stopping in any other city like New York or Washington, places people would probably fly into. Food for thought.
But it's funny. It's for the plot.
It is funny. But okay, so the plot seemingly is leading up to him being super disappointed when he gets to America, and America doesn't live up to his like imagination of a bunch of like slutty girls who will drop their panties at the slightest hint of a British accent. And I think that would be like probably a better, more affirming relationship message. And there's a lot of ways you could do that humorously. But instead, he shows up to a Wisconsin bar and he's like, it's like a scene from Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, because like women just start like pouncing on him left and right. They're like, oh, you have a British accent. That's so cute. We love British accents. And all these girls are flirting with him and they take him home to their like shared apartment. And they're like, it gets so cold in our apartment. We have to take off all our clothes and snuggle together in the apartment. And he's just like, rrr, rrr. And at the end of the film, there's a scene where everyone's at the airport because, like, it's a symbol, Naomi, of love and how it manifests in all different ways. So of course you have to close the film in an airport.
Love is actually all around us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Colin comes out and oh my god, he's dating one of these slutty girls from America. Ah, love truly can bloom in the craziest of places.
Sorry, Joel. We don't know that she's like a slut. Damn, God.
Look, I am all for women acting slutty. I am against people calling out women for using their sexuality in a way that brings them pleasure. How's that?
Oh, God.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's like, what is the moral of this story? You have this guy who's this total creep, who's unsuccessful with women, who fails to change any part of himself, and gets rewarded with, like, this porn star-looking sexy teen girl at the end. Like,
why do you think everyone is just a teen in this? Like, I'm just so confused. You're like, she's a teen, she looks so young, she's obviously a teen. Joel, maybe they just have really great skincare.
That's probably it. The British are known for their great skincare. Not their dental work, but their amazing skincare.
Yeah, they have to overachieve in one.
But here I almost wonder if this supports my thesis that Richard Curtis is telling the audience at the beginning of the film that, like, you shouldn't take this too seriously, that it's like this slapped together romantic film that, like, tries to shove in a lot of ideas about love and affection and doesn't do so very well. Because in any other movie, the plot line would be this guy's a total loser and, like, doesn't get anything. And here Richard Curtis is like, no, even total losers get love. In the end, all men deserve a sexy lady. They will have sex with them. Amazing orgies with their roommates. It just doesn't work for me. It's weird. It's gross. And the fact he doesn't return to it in Red Nose Day probably indicates he was like, yeah, maybe that's one of the things that hasn't aged well.
I don't know. I thought it was really weird that they had to take off their clothes to be warm, but that's just me.
Well, they had to bundle together, Naomi, because, Wisconsin, no one owns heaters. It's one of those problems. You can either set a fire in the middle of your house, which is dangerous, or you can all bundle together in a big king-size bed. Yeah, you'd probably
I
need
thought
a
they said it
king-size
was a
bed for,
twin.
like, 4
I thought they
people.
said it was twin.
Oh, that seems so uncomfortable.
It definitely is, yeah. You just sleep like sausages.
That's the most unrealistic part of that movie, Naomi. 4 people bundling together on a twin-sized bed.
That's the most unrealistic? Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Not Billy Bob
Okay.
Thornton being the president of the United States.
No, I buy that. I'd vote for Billy Bob. Yeah. Naomi, we got 2 more major plots to discuss. Do you want to discuss Alan
Rickman? Harry
Cummings?
Potter?
No, what's his name?
Alan Rickman. I don't know what his last
Alan
name
Rickman,
is.
thank you. Whose name is Harry in this movie, so I just refer to him as Harry Potter.
I think we should talk about Leslie Nielsen.
Let's talk about Leslie Nielsen. So Leslie Nielsen's story is actually starring Liam Neeson, and it's kind of unclear what's happening at the beginning because it goes by so fast, and I didn't really understand it until this latest rewatch. But his first scene is he's like sitting at home in his house. It's dark and it's empty, and he picks up the phone and he calls someone. And I thought at first this was his sister, but it's not. If you like read through the Wikipedia and the IMDb, the relationship appears to be they're both friends because they're like kids go to the same school or something. But he's like, I've been so depressed ever since my wife died.
They're siblings, Joel.
They're siblings?
Yes, they're siblings.
Oh, okay, that makes more
That's
sense.
his sister.
What a shitty relationship. Damn, I wish I never have that sort of relationship with my sister.
That you only call me when after your wife has died?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like he calls her and is like, I've been so depressed ever since my wife died. And his sister is like, suck it up, you big baby. I got things to do.
You
and
big
the thing she has to
buffoon.
do is talk to her daughter, who's like, I'm in the Christmas pageant at school. And the daughter is a lobster in the Christmas pageant. And she's like, I didn't know there were that many lobsters at the nativity. And the daughter has some cute line. It's like, oh, I'm lobster number 2. And she's like, there were multiple lobsters at the birth of Jesus?
There's multiple crustaceans at the birth of Jesus.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I thought that
Yeah.
was fun. But yeah,
Jesus was
Liam Neeson's whole character is he's a sad sack because his wife just died and he doesn't know how to raise his son. He's a lot like Steve Harvey, who's never talked to his son.
Stepson. It's his stepson.
He still hasn't talked to her. Him.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, they didn't bond fully because it was, like, his stepson, and then his wife okay, I guess she was, like, sick for a while, but, like, his wife died, and he was like, oh, crap, like, I don't know how to raise a son, and then his son is going through, like, an angst period where he's like, I'm in love with this woman, and so I need to learn how to play the drums.
Oh my god, you're skipping so many details. So, Liam Neeson comes home from the funeral and is like, I don't know what to do to his sister. He's up there in his room. He's being so lonely and mopey. I don't know how to talk to young boys. He could be shooting heroin for all I know. And he takes his son out to the park and is like, let's talk. I need to know, what's bothering you. Are you upset your mom just died? And his son is like, not really. And he's like, what? And son's like, yeah, I'm a little bit upset at the fact that my mother just died, but really, the thing that's giving me heart palpitations is that I'm in love. And I'll say this, he's a cute kid, right? They did good casting on like, aw shucks, little guy. He's just a little guy in a big world. And he has love in his heart. It's so cute. I love it. But he's like a 10-year-old boy, and Liam Neeson or Leslie Nielsen is like, aren't you a little young to be in love? And he's like, I am not. Also, it hurts to be in love. And I hurt because I'm in love. Don't you know what it's like to be in love, Dad? You suck. And Liam Neeson's like, okay, we're going to figure out a way in order to get you the love of your life. Naomi, the love of his life is like an 11-year-old girl at his school. And I don't want to, like, shit on young kids having crushes.
No, I
but,
think
like,
you should.
Liam Neeson knowing absolutely nothing about this situation or, like, how his kid interacts at school. His kid could be a huge bully. His kid could be a huge piece of shit. But he's like, we're gonna make it so you can fall in love with her and get her attention. And the solution they arrive at is he needs to teach his kids how to play the drums, because if you're a really good drum player, you'll be able to be in the school pageant on stage with this girl who's a really good singer. And she's going to be so impressed by how you play the drums. She's going to be like, how could I ever have ignored you, you 10-year-old boy? I am sophisticated because I'm American. And actually, it's the exact opposite of the Wisconsin story, because she's American, which makes her exotic in his eyes. And Wisconsin is exotic to the British guy, Colin. Parallels. Oh man, this movie's so layered. It's really clever. But yeah, the movie, the plot is just like, he learns the drums. He shows up to the pageant. He plays the drums. She leaves. He's heartbroken. He's like, oh, I missed my shot. She didn't talk to me. And Leslie Nielsen is like, you know what? If you want to prove you care about someone, you stalk them to the ends of the earth. And so for whatever reason, this girl's family is leaving that night to fly back to America. It's unclear if they're coming back. Maybe it's just a vacation. I don't know. But Leslie Nielsen drives him to the airport, and he and Mr. Bean help his son sneak past airport security so he can run through airport security, somehow knowing where she's going to end up in this giant airport, and confess his feelings for her. And it works. Naomi, it works.
Of course
She's
it
like,
does.
you're the cool guy who plays drums. I love you. And they hug, and then she leaves for America. And he's like, still got it.
I think she
I'm a
kissed
cute
him
little
on the
twerp.
cheek. It was like
Oh,
a
okay.
little peck on the cheek, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
But there's some cute parts of the story. I do notice that, like, the airport's a big set piece, and I kind of feel that ties back into the 9/11 thing at the beginning, where it's like, it used to be you could chase people through an airport and be romantic, but love got in the way because 9/11, it's been interfered with. And it's only through the saving grace of Mr. Bean that he's able to escape the airport security checkpoint and get to confess his feelings to the love of his life. And even then, he's nearly arrested. But the moral of the story seems to be 9/11 ruined love.
Joel, I want you to know that some of the shit that comes out of your mouth is very questionable.
But yeah, like, the message seems to be in this storyline that if you're good at something, women will find you sexually attractive, or they'll feel obligated to find you sexually attractive. And I don't like that. I think it would be better if they, like, ended up friends or something. Like, hey, you're kind of cool. You know how to play the drums. But instead, the kid shows, like, a modicum of effort and is rewarded with, like, the cool girl as his girlfriend. And you say, Joel, we don't know that's actually what Richard Curtis intended. However, Naomi, I have seen the sequel, Red Nose Actually. And that is exactly what Richard Curtis intended. How long is the sequel?
Is it like a full movie?
15 minutes. It's so short. But Liam Neeson is just being a sad sack on a bench at I think maybe the same park that he was talking to his son with in the first film. And his son just, like, appears out of nowhere. And he's like, Dad, I surprised you. I'm here from America. And Liam Neeson's like, oh, that is a surprise. I love you. It's so good to see you. And he's like, I have a second surprise for you, Dad. You're paying for my ticket. And Liam Neeson is like, ha, 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 ha. Let us go laugh and drink like old times. And he's like, no, wait. I have something else to tell you. Remember how when I was a young twerp, I was in love with that girl in my class? And Liam Neeson is like, yes, let me provide some exposition. I remember that you were heartbroken and you dated other girls, but you could never get over the feeling of love you had with that 11-year-old American girl. And he's like, I know. And that's why this time I brought her back. And he just pulls her out of, like, imaginary space from the side of the frame. When, like, clearly Liam Neeson should have seen her. But he's like, look, it is her. I finally have her. She is my prize. I am a hunter, and she is my prey. And Liam Neeson is like, welcome to the family. I hope you don't get taken. He doesn't say that, but that would have been good if he had been like, you could have been taken. And
no, that would have been so good. Oh my god. Oh my god.
But yeah, I don't like this idea that, like, if you get good at something, like, women automatically will fall in love with you. I feel that's the wrong message for young boys, young impressionable boys who maybe are watching this at a sleepover because their parents put it on. It's weird. I don't hate it. Again, I think Liam Neeson plays a fine role as a grieving father. I think the kid is cute. I think some of the scenes of him like running through the airport are well done, but the messaging overall just feels gross.
True.
Speaking of gross messaging, can we talk about Harry, the ad executive?
Yes, Alan Rickman. So Alan Rickman is married to Leslie Nielsen's sister. And Leslie Nielsen's sister is, I don't remember her name. Hold on. I have this in my notes, I think. But she is a mother. She seems like she's a stay-at-home mom. Is that correct? I would say that. And she's dealing with the school play, and she's like making, you know, the costumes and stuff for the crustaceans. And then they like are jumping through, and it's like, you know, it's a marriage, you know, it's not as exciting as it used to be, you know. And they go to a Christmas party that the ad execs are like putting on, and Alan Rickman is the boss of everyone in the office, and his assistant is like flirting with him, and he's like, I'm gonna like flirt back a little bit. And then they like, don't they like dance together or something, like the assistant and
they
him?
dance together at the holiday party. She actually gives a line when he's telling her to plan the party. He's like, yes, you know, do the guacamole for Christmas, and, you know, make sure we keep away one of our like designers because he gets gropey. And it's like, fire that guy, dude. But she's like, well, I'll just be hanging out next to the mistletoe looking for someone to have a kiss with, because you're hot. You're like 10 times my age. You're like my grandfather's age, and I find you desirable. Alan Rickman, horribly miscast in this. He is terrible in this. Alan Rickman, fine actor, wrong in this.
Yeah. And so they're like, they have this flirtatious relationship, and then they end up going to the mall, and they're all shopping, and she like spots him over near the jewelry. His wife spots him over near the jewelry, and she's like, oh my God, he's like gonna go above and beyond and like get me something like really great. It's gonna save our marriage, and it's gonna be exciting again, blah, blah, blah. And she like
I'll insert a comment here. Lauren used to work the jewelry counter, I think at like Macy's or Kohl's, and she would always say, you know, oh my God, men would come in and buy like big heart-shaped pieces of jewelry for their wife. And she's like, no, ladies hate that. Ladies hate heart-shaped pieces of jewelry. They want to buy it, they buy it themselves. But yeah, Alan Rickman spends like 500 pounds on this like gold necklace in the shape of a heart.
Yeah, and so she finds it, his wife finds it later on in his coat, and she's like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And they're opening up presents on Christmas Eve before this like school nativity scene, which is a weird time. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, Christmas Eve is a weird time to have a nativity scene as a school project. But anyways, she's like, I want to open up a present. And she opens up what she thinks is the jewelry, but it ends up just being like a CD or something. And then she goes in her room and she's like, I have to get ready for this like nativity scene, school play. And she's like, I have to go get my coat. And then she's like mourning the loss of her husband because she like knows that he's like having a flirtatious relationship with his assistant.
Yeah, she's treated like shit.
Yeah.
There's no like resolution to it. It's just like Alan Rickman fucked up and he's lusting after his younger like co-workers, and he doesn't really even feel remorseful for it. He's more like sad that he got caught. And I thought that was interesting. I'm like, this is good plot. I like the story, but then it just goes nowhere. It's like, yep, their marriage is fucked up. They do appear in the ending scene where everyone's at the airport and they like kind of less romantically greet each other. So it's like, maybe they're staying together for the kids, but it's also like, that feels like the most interesting of these stories to explore. And if you look at what Richard Curtis said about the development of this film, he said something along the lines of he originally had 2 storylines in mind that then, you know, bloomed into all these other storylines. And so I wonder if this was one of the more developed stories he had in mind that then kind of just went nowhere when 10 separate plots demanded attention from the audience. So I liked it. I liked the storyline. I thought it was compelling. I don't think Alan Rickman's great in this, but I thought for what it was well written, and I'm just disappointed they didn't do anything with it. And I think Alan Rickman might have been dead by the time the Red Nose actually film came out, because they did not do a follow-up. But the follow-up would just be like her peeing on his grave or something. Oh my God, Naomi, we completely forgot a plot. We forgot his assistant. How do we forget his assistant?
Yeah. No. It's not his assistant. It's like one of his like execs that like fall.
Yeah.
And she like is in love with her coworker, and everyone's like, oh, how long have you been in love with him? 8 years or something like that. And she's like, I
No, no,
can't
no.
be
Okay,
with
I
him.
have this written down. I thought it was
Okay.
so audacious. So the first time we see her, she's at the wedding, and she's the one who approaches creepy Rick Grimes and is like, "You're being creepy." And this
Yeah.
establishes that even to someone who's emotionally oblivious, as is established in a later scene, Rick Grimes is being really creepy. But then it just cuts. And later, Alan Rickman's in the office, and he calls her in, and he's like, "Sarah, how long have you worked at this organization?" But he does it more like a diehard accent. And she's like, "I don't know, 8 years, 6 months, 2 days or something." And he's like, "And how long have you been in love with Carl, our enigmatic chief designer?" And she's like, "I don't know,
Probably about
8
that
months,
time.
8 years, 6 months, 2 days." And he's like, "Well, it's obvious. You need to call him on a date or hook up with him at the holiday party. Do this, Sarah. Have sex and lots of babies with him in order to preserve the integrity of our office." I can't
This
do
is
it
a
now.
really great Alan Rickman impersonation.
is
I'm
it?
not gonna lie, yeah.
So this boss just pulls in an employee and is like, "Go fuck this other employee," which is like, oh my god, London, do you have an HR department? Are there any like anti-sexual harassment ordinances?
No.
But she takes this advice to heart and is like, "You're right, I should be more flirtatious with my colleagues." So she tries to like pick him up as they're leaving late at night, but she can't summon the courage. And then a phone call interrupts her as she's like, "Oh, I fucked up that opportunity." And for the first like time I saw this film, for the first half, I thought she was married. And I was like, why is Alan Rickman telling this married woman to go bang her coworker? And I thought that was even more interesting. But it's not that. It turns out she's a brother who's mentally ill, who's in like some kind of sanatorium
Facility, yeah.
Facility, yeah. And he's like constantly badgering her throughout her days, demanding her attention. And this like clearly is a stressor on her life. And she's like, "Oh, it's frustrating, but I need to go, spend some time with him." And at the Christmas party, she gets approached by Carl and they flirt. And she actually takes him home with her. And they, I think, are making out in bed. And this is another example of this movie like really misusing nudity, because she like takes off her shirt or something and it's like boobs. And then like immediately she puts her shirt back on because she gets a phone call from her brother, and her brother's like, I need your attention." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Carl, my enigmatic chief designer, I'm gonna have to go spend time with my brother." And Carl's like, "You are so unsexy, I'm gonna leave you and never talk to you again." And he leaves, and that's it. And it's such a terrible story, not because like there isn't like kind of a heartwarming ending where she like goes and spends time with her brother, but because the moral seems to be professional women who have obligations cannot find happiness and fulfillment.
Yeah.
You can't find.
That's true.
Yeah. and it's so stupid because like either Carl's really into her or he just wants to like bang her. And either way, you'd think that Carl could be like, "Okay, let's reschedule this for next week." But instead, it's like they never can speak to each other again because of this one time her brother was a distraction. And I don't understand why Richard Curtis would do this. It seems to be just like, let's torment this poor woman. Let's make her life miserable. She can't deserve happiness because she's also in a motherly role. He kind of hates mothers, right? Because Alan Rickman's wife, is a mother, and she's not hot. There's actually a scene where, like, she's undressing and she's wearing, like, granny underwear, and meanwhile the secretary is, like, dancing around in her underwear at her flat with her new necklace. And it's like, look how hot this young, nubile secretary is compared to this old crone of a wife I have. It's so weird, Richard Curtis. Why'd you do it, Richard Curtis? But yeah, she ends up upset. Richard Curtis tries to salvage this in the Red Nose Actually sequel. And what happens is she's at work. I guess she's still working at the same job. And she gets a phone call. And she picks up the phone like she's answering her brother in the movies. And it's always this like really patient, like understanding tone. Like, "Hello, honey. I'm so sorry. I'm still at work. I'm late." But there's a twist, Naomi. It's a husband on the other end this time. And Naomi, her husband is, and I forgot
Carl.
to look up his name. He's the actor who is Mr. McDreamy on Grey's Anatomy. He's the like chiseled jaw man.
Derek Shepherd?
Yeah, that's it. He's the husband. And he's like, "I always love it how you pick up. You're always so affectionate. Sometimes I call you just to interrupt you at work so I can hear your lovely voice." And it's like, dick move, husband. Let this
I need
woman
to
be a
watch
career
the
professional.
sequel. Oh my god. Wow.
Yeah, but that's her happy ending. Richard Curtis is like, maybe I was a dick to this woman. Okay, she gets a hot new husband. It's the same with Rick Grimes. It's like, Rick Grimes, you get this hot supermodel wife. And
Wasn't he,
Liam
like,
Neeson like
people's
marries
person?
Claudia Schiffer. The only other plot that we could possibly mention is Mr. Bean appears, and Mr. Bean's just like this. People have described Mr. Bean as an angel. Richard Curtis is like, oh yeah, he was an angel in this film, but he's just an asshole. He's like packaging up Alan Rickman's necklace and spends like an incredibly strenuous amount of time like packaging it and adding candy and wrapping paper and all sorts of things. The Red Nose actually does the same thing where he's at a Walgreens packaging up a Red Nose Day nose. Where they sell these fake plastic like clown noses to people, and he spends like 15 minutes like packaging it for a kid who orders one. So he's not really that interesting. But yeah, that's all the plots. That's all the stories in Love Actually and Red Nose Actually. And as you can see, we have some mixed feelings on them.
The more we dig into it, the more I dislike this film because you make me hate every single film that we review at the end of it. So thank you for that.
It's not like the best film in the world, but it's definitely watchable. I mentioned, how well edited it is. The fact you can follow all of these is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
The fact that the storylines have these cute little asides, there's something people can pick up on and find amusing, even if they, are like, oh, really don't like how that storyline played out. But I do want to talk about kind of just as a one last look at the film, how this film just doesn't really treat women well and elevates men to a position of power and prominence they probably don't deserve. Let me give you some examples. You have all these men who are kind of weird and gross. You have Billy Mack, the professional music star, who's this like boorish, crass pop star. He like repeatedly denigrates women throughout the film. Like he's talking with a radio host, and the radio host is like, "Who's the best girl you ever slept with?" And he's like, "Britney Spears." "No, she was rubbish." And it's like, ha ha ha, Britney Spears is a slut. It's the early 2000s. We can say that sort of thing. I didn't like that. So I get it. He's like this washed up, pop idol, but the fact that he has all this prominence and the film doesn't really call him out on that's kind of gross. I say that because in the follow-up Red Nose Day, actually, he appears again with a new single. He's talking to the exact same radio host, and the crazy surprise is the radio host has a much better studio and has gotten significantly more handsome. It's the same actor. I don't know why they chose
like
to do this.
Hill
I'm like,
in You People.
Yeah. I'm like, that's not how the media industry has evolved. No one's like, oh man, the radio industry is doing too well this year, 2023. But he's talking with the guy again in the sequel 14 years later, and the guy's like, let's ask the same questions. Who was your greatest shag? And he's like, well, I know it was definitely one of the Kardashians, but I don't know which one. And it's like, ha ha ha, the Kardashians are all sluts. Amazing. You've done it again, Richard Curtis. Now, again, like if this was a one-off, it wouldn't be so bad, but this is repeated throughout the film. You have the prime minister who's like a lovesick puppy who decides to take advantage of his position of power by punishing the woman who works for him for the president sexually harassing her. And at one point, Natalie walks out of the room and he looks up at a wall with a series of like paintings of previous prime ministers and sees Margaret Thatcher and is like, I bet you never had this problem. No, of course you did, you saucy minx. And I can see that got a chuckle out of me, but it's like a mean-spirited joke. It's like, Margaret Thatcher, she was a hard ass and a slut. It's like, come on, man. Like, why does this have to be the butt of all the jokes?
I want to try
you have Rick Grimes
calling people saucy minxes now from now on. I'm just going to be like, oh, you saucy minx.
It's a good line.
Yeah.
No, I like the line. Yeah, that's not the problem here. You have, Colin Firth, who falls in love over 4 weeks with his Portuguese maid who can't speak English. And it's just like, oh, you clean my house. You know what else you could clean? My dick. That's right. I'm lonely because my wife cheated on me with my brother and I've got boundary issues. And then he's just like, I'm going to propose to you in a bar at your work because this is an appropriate venue. You definitely won't feel uncomfortable if I
Well, they also treat
you.
his sister like crap too. Like the sister.
No, we'll get to that in a second.
You want to date? You want to marry my Dunkin' Donuts daughter or something like that?
Dunkin' Donuts Girl of the Year. Yeah, it was great. You have Rick Grimes, who's like lusting after his best friend's wife for either 2 weeks or several years, depending on when she and Chiwetel got together in the first place. But yeah, like he's this weird obsessive pervert who disrupts his friend's wedding, prevents them from having a lasting memory of them dancing together, and then goes behind his back in order to flirt with his wife on multiple occasions. And it's like, okay, that's not great. You have Harry, who's an ad executive who uses his position of authority over people in order to like get with his like hot, sexy assistants, which admittedly she comes on to him. I'm not going to like pretend it was the other way around, but he like definitely exploits this lovesick puppy that works for him and, you know, tries to convince her to sleep with him by buying her expensive presents. That's not a good look. Don't like that. You have Liam Neeson, who's this grieving father who, in fairness, has some stuff going on, but he teaches his son the importance of grand romantic gestures, badgering women into a relationship, and, worst of all, violating airport security rules.
So true.
Yeah, I'd like to imagine he did all of this to pick up his wife, and that's like how he's teaching his son. He's like, when I tried to pick up your mother, I chased after her. I flagged down her plane on the runway. I prevented them from taking off, like Jim Carrey in Liar Liar. Another bit of headcanon for the people who want to rewatch this bad boy. Just imagine that Jim Carrey in Liar Liar grows up to be Leslie Nielsen. Yeah, so, like, I don't think, any of the men in this film particularly come across as good. I mean, I've even forgotten a couple of them. You have Colin, who's this weird sex pervert who never learns to treat women with respect and is rewarded with this, like, hot threesome and, hot girlfriend. You have Carl, the sex god, who either tries to use a woman for sex or immediately stops respecting women when they're in a maternal role. And if he's not the most important person in that woman's life, can no longer find them attractive. You have Mr. Bean, even, who I understand is played for comedic effect, but he's like this huge annoying jerk who inconveniences several people's lives and breaks airport security rules by allowing cute little kid to run through. Like, the only two people who I think come out of this film who are male, relatively unscathed, are John Watson as porn star, who's just this nice, unassuming guy, and cute little kid, right? Like, there's very few redeeming qualities in the other characters. But then, like, to your point, like, this film also doesn't treat women well. Like, it makes men look like jerks and normalizes their behavior, and it just treats a lot of women like shit. Margaret Thatcher and Britney Spears being two examples. But, like, you have Keira Knightley, who's, like, forced to endure the creepy sex pervert that is, like, lusting after her, but also kind of invites it on by engaging with him and, like, kissing him at the end of the film. And it's like, oh, ladies, don't do that. That's not a good idea. You have, and I forgot her name up until now, Laura Linney, who is the career woman ad executive person who wants to have a relationship with someone who's just as lovesick as other people in the film, but like engages with it appropriately and is rewarded for it with nothing. Like, oh, confessing your feelings for you doesn't work out, women. You shouldn't do that. You'll just embarrass yourself and be left unhappy and alone. Again, Richard Curtis tries to undo this in his sequel film, but the end message of the film that everyone has actually watched is you'll just end up upset. Sorry, ladies, don't try to do anything. You have the Portuguese girl, Aurelia, who's an indentured servant pursued by a sad, mopey Englishman who is pressured into accepting a proposal from a man she hasn't seen in weeks. I understand that she's free to make her own decisions, but there's obviously a lot of social pressure behind, the decision that she does make. You have Karen, who's Leslie Nielsen's brother, and she's a bit of a dick, but she gets her comeuppance when her husband, Alan Rickman, cheats on her, and she deserves it because she's a dick to Leslie Nielsen and also a mother, and who wants to date a mother? You have all the sexy American ladies. I don't think like they're treated poorly. I just think that the overall message does seem to be American women are loose, and foreigners, you can just come over and get all the free sex you want. This is interesting, and I think it's a larger cultural discussion where so much of American media that's exported to foreign nations is porn. And so the impression that a lot of other nations have about Americans is that all American women are super promiscuous and will, drop their panties at, the flick of a button or whatever. I don't know why I said flick of a button. I don't like that those words came out of my mouth. But my point being is like, this just reinforces the cultural stereotype that American women are like super promiscuous and are more than willing to have sex with people, which unfortunately doesn't help when like American women try to go abroad and like explore the world and see all the things because they frequently experience harassment. And then, of course, you have Natalie, who's an assistant in British government who appears to be concerned doing a good job and being perceived as competent. She's the butt of multiple jokes by staff members, including being called fat by fellow women in the office behind her back, and is the punchline of a cabinet meeting where a majority male cabinet sees her as a sex object because the prime minister says, "Who do I have to bang?" And then, "Ha ha, you're the punchline of a joke." She's placed in an uncomfortable position by the U.S. president because her security and comfort is not a concern, and then is fired for it by Dick Prime Minister. But it's okay because he blesses her by calling her sexy and making out with her at the end of the film.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I understand there are worse and better interpretations of this, but at the end of the day, like, the overall messaging of the film is like women should put up with a lot of shit, and it's okay that men can be shit because they're attractive, and at the end of the day, all you really need is an attractive, financially comfortable guy to support you. And I don't like that. But hey, besides all the bad stuff, this is actually pretty good.
Oh my god. Another film that Joel has ruined for me. Just wanted
Naomi,
to
we should
throw that
watch
out there.
this every year. Every single year we should just watch this. We should get like drunk together on stream, and then, you know, we get to call out the bad stuff in front of us as it comes.
No, I think we should review how Die Hard is a rom-com next year. Or just a romantic movie.
I would argue it's pretty romantic. Have you ever had a man run across broken glass in his bare feet for you? That's one of
No,
the
and
most
I
romantic gestures a guy
Prefer
can
not
do.
to. Yeah. Prefer not to
Have
see
you ever
that.
had a guy kill multiple German tourists just to kiss you on the forehead? Ugh.
No,
My heart's
I have
aflutter.
not.
Yeah. But that's it. That's Love Actually. That's Red Nose Actually. That's our first conversation about Richard Curtis. It might not be the last.
I've only been trying to record this for over a year, but it's fine. It's fine. We did it. It's done.
Did we explain in the first episode how we originally saw this?
Yeah, we talked. Yeah, we did. We said we went to the
Okay.
theater, but that was over a year ago. We didn't include the fact that we went to see it over a year ago, and we were like, "Oh, we're gonna record this for the Christmas series this year." And then the time came and went. We didn't make time for it, and then it just happened. We just happened to happen upon it again this year. So, yeah.
I should note that Lauren and Lynn watched it with us, and we initially thought we were going to have a 4-person conversation about this, but
Yeah.
there's 2 problems with that. 1, we only have 3 mics, and 2, we all have strong opinions on all sides of the spectrum about the quality of this
Yeah,
film.
this would have been
So it probably
4
would have been
separate
twice
parts.
as long.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
It would have
I
been
don't
like
know.
Clarissa, a young woman's introduction to familial, all that bullshit.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're not gonna go through that whole book title.
That's my
again.
favorite joke. I love that joke.
Oh my god.
That's what I'll be remembered for. The porn script I write for the 943,000 word English novel.
Anyways, audience, we hope you enjoyed another episode. Thank you for sticking with us. Next week we are exploring dating trends of 2023, looking back at them. So tune in for that next time.
Well, not just that, Naomi. What happened in 2023, but also looking forward, expected trends for 2024. And
Yes.
don't just trust us. We're turning to the experts on this.
The experts of Spoon University. I'm just kidding. We hope you have a great week. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, and have a great week.
We have many thanks for the use of our theme music, which is the song Drop by Ketsa. You can find more of their music online at ketsa.uk. You can also find Date These Guys online on Twitter and Instagram at Date These Guys, or visit datetheseguys.org. If you have questions for the podcast or want to be a wealthy sugar parent, send an email to datetheseguys@gmail.com. If you're looking to make an impact in the world, this show strongly recommends Planned Parenthood, a nonprofit organization that provides reproductive health care in the United States. Planned Parenthood provides birth control, long-acting reversible contraceptive implants, clinical breast examinations, pregnancy screenings, prenatal care, testing and treatment for sexually transmitted infections, and abortions. They also do great work for those who are lower income. 4/5 of their clients are at or below 50% of the federal poverty line. Both Joel and Naomi are monthly donors to Planned Parenthood. We hope you will be too.